All right. Hi, everyone. So I want you to imagine that one day you go to class and you get there and, oh no, you completely forgot to prepare for your presentation and it's worth 30% of your grade. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, that's because it is. Don't worry. So I'm actually going to talk to you about nightmares and the individual differences that are associated with them. So nightmares can be thought of as really vivid, emotionally negative dreams. They can cause anxiety and they can even wake the dreamer. Some people have a lot of nightmares, some people have really vivid ones, and some people don't have nightmares at all. You might have nightmares about something that your friend thinks is funny, and you might have nightmares in common. So where do all these differences come from? Many correlational studies have found a link between certain personal characteristics and nightmares. So what's one of the first things that comes to mind when you think of nightmares? Scary movies. Scary movies give us nightmares. There's no question about that. But it's not just the monsters and the music and the suspense that give us nightmares. It's also the ability to empathize with the characters in the movies. So people who empathize more with these characters have more nightmares than those who don't. This is called fantasy empathy. So people who fantasize more are more likely to have nightmares. And this idea of fantasizing is also linked with dissociations. Dissociations in this sense are a disconnect between reality and the nightmares. So someone who fantasizes more often or, say, empathizes with someone in a movie is more likely to have more nightmares, to disconnect from reality and become more absorbed in the nightmares that they're having. Nightmares are also related to another aspect that differs between all individuals, which is personality. Specifically, they're related to openness. Openness is the breadth, complexity, and depth of someone's mental life. Basically, it's how open you are to new ideas and abstract ideas. So someone who's more open to new ideas is also more likely to have more nightmares. Specifically, nightmares are related to two facets of openness, ideas and fantasy. We see that idea of fantasy again. And it's easy to see how that relates to nightmares because someone who's more open to fantasies is more likely to dissociate and more likely to become absorbed in their nightmares. So we're starting to see all these common aspects in different people and how they differ between people. And fantasy, dissociations, and openness are also related to another aspect of nightmares, which is lucidity. A lucid dream is one in which the dreamer is aware that they are dreaming. Don't get confused between lucidity and dissociations. They are not the opposite of each other. Someone can be dissociated from reality and be really absorbed in their nightmares, but also still be aware that they're having a nightmare. Lucidity is shown in the movie Inception, if anyone has watched that. Cool movie. In this movie, the characters are going through different levels of dreams, and they're aware that they're asleep, and they're aware that they're dreaming. So that's just an example of lucidity. So we're starting to see all these different aspects that are common in people who have nightmares. They're likely to fantasize, dissociate, be open to new ideas, and they're likely to have lucid dreams. These are all internal components of people. They're all internal factors. They're not something that can change. They're not something that you can control. But there's also an external factor that also influences nightmares, and that's stress. You're all thinking it. I'm sure you've all had nightmares caused from stress. Think back to that kind of story I told you at the beginning of the presentation. That was pretty stressful, right? Irregularities in sleep, like nightmares, can be caused by stress. And that's due to dysregulation in certain systems in the brain. So areas like the amygdala, the hippocampus, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the medial cortex get emotionally dysregulated by stress. And because nightmares are negatively emotional dreams, that negative emotionality affects nightmares. While we may not be able to control certain internal aspects of our characteristics, we can do something about external aspects. It was found that participants who imagined their nightmares and very calmly imagined the ones that were causing them stress and then calmly imagined changing their nightmares were actually able to reduce their nightmare frequency. So that's pretty interesting, and it's related to external stress. So we're all different people, and we all have different characteristics, and those actually influence our nightmares. So the next time you have a nightmare, don't think of it as so much of a bad thing. Think of it as a representation of your uniqueness. Thank you.